To be a member of the shadow cabinet is a huge honour and a privilege in the party that I love. And to have to do this has been heartbreaking. It's been the most difficult thing I've ever done.
The last Corbyn supporter in Keir Starmer's shadow cabinet, Andy McDonald, chose party conference to quit his job and deposit a mess on Keir Starmer's parade. It's a sign of the depth of anger on the left as those who backed Jeremy Corbyn sense the party's right is in the ascendant and trying to put the left back in its box.
Do you feel you've got your party back?
What I feel is that there are millions of Labour voters or former Labour voters who can now feel that they are getting their Labour Party back.
There's a battle going on for the soul of the party.
Inspire us. Commit yourself to what you said in 2017, not the nonsense you're coming out with today.
After a fractious debate, Keir Starmer won last night's vote to change leadership election rules. The left is clear it was intended to put the threshold, 40 nominating MPs, just outside their reach and block another leader like Jeremy Corbyn.
16 times, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt.
Just down the seafront from the conference hall, a fringe event spawned during Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. A refuge for the left as many leave a party they thought had come their way.
There's definitely people, I think, who are drifting away, who are putting their energy elsewhere, which is sad.
Keir Starmer, whatever you think about him, is a straightforward and compassionate. No, he is a straightforward and compassionate person. Well, if you don't think so, why? Well, don't bother voting for him.
Paul Mason was amongst the former Corbyn supporters Keir Starmer wooed to his side in the leadership contest. He's not enjoyed much of what he's seen since.
Well, I thought we had a deal with Keir, that he would lead the party from the centre, there would be no purges of the left. And when I saw the reforms coming down the road, I thought, well, that is almost the last straw for me.
He won with a lot of support that Jeremy Corbyn had. He worked that side of the party. Do you think he always intended to dupe them, or he's changed, or he's being held captive by another wing of the party?
I think it's one of those three, and I think it's probably being held captive.
And the left are pretty sure which blast from the past has their leader's ear.
A lot of people sort of spot Peter Mandelson walking around, wonder if he's pulling levers, got some of his own people in there, influencing the whole agenda.
I think there's some people who think he comes in every day and the team around Keir sit at his feet and he dictates what's happening. I'm hoping that's not the case.
But you're not convinced?
I'm not convinced, no, I'm not, because it's the same old playbook. It's the same old playbook. You know, try and demonstrate you're a leader by defeating your own party. Publish statements that are so banal that no one understands what they actually mean.
Well, I don't run the party, and nor do I have agents to do so. I come here, as a Labour member of 40 years standing.
A humble member.
Who is very, very committed, with granite-like commitment to the re-electability of the Labour Party.
Keir Starmer's allies say he is honouring pledges made in the leadership campaign, added to today with the Shadow Chancellor promising to abolish business rates and unveiling a giant green investment programme.
Labour's climate investment pledge. An additional £28 billion of capital investment in our country's green transition for each and every year of this decade.
I owe my soul to the company store.
So soon after entering the promised land of a Corbyn leadership, the left finds itself marginalised by a man who said he wanted to unite the party. Some are leaving, some are putting up a fight, but unity is in short supply.
Well, a short time ago, I spoke to Andy McDonald and I asked him why he felt he had to resign.
Well, this is a huge matter of principle for me, and the most difficult decision I think I've ever made in my life. But the nation is facing a crisis. We have the failure of the government to maintain the uplift in universal credit, council tax rises, and ahead of us, national insurance contribution rises. And for us to not say more about what a national minimum wage should be in these circumstances I think it's a failure on our part. I think we've got to be clear. You know, £10 an hour was resolved as a position in 2015. We're here now in 2021. Economic circumstances have got so much worse, and I think we've got to send a very clear message to the people of this country that their needs are being noted, observed. We're listening to what they're saying, and we're going to respond in policy terms in an appropriate way.
How far short, then, do you think Sir Keir has fallen as a leader?
Well, he's got to listen to these concerns, and we've got to be bolder and bigger in what we are saying. And I think he can do this, but at the moment, the voices around him, in my view, prevent him from taking those steps.
And if he doesn't, do you think he'll lose the next election?
Oh, I think he will listen. He's a supremely intelligent man, and I just beg him to listen to the representations that are being made and conduct ourselves in a way that listens to the incredible expertise that we have in the movement. People are at the coal faces in every sector, and I'm absolutely confident that they will be supporting a position whereby the Labour Party would agree to an hourly national minimum rate of £15 an hour. If he listens to those people, I think we can get to the right place.
You said in your resignation letter, which was really quite a stinging letter, that Labour was more divided than ever under Sir Keir Starmer. Haven't you just exacerbated those divisions? And where's your evidence for it anyway?
Well, I've tried my best, and I think people across the party will, I hope, recognise that the work that I've done serving for Jeremy Corbyn as Shadow Transport Secretary, and now for Sir Keir Starmer under the employment brief. There was a commitment to social and economic justice. There were pledges made, and I don't want to see those in any way eroded or any detraction from them whatsoever. I want to redouble our efforts in that regard, not retreat from them in any way.
A Blairite former minister has tweeted that you've done this deliberately to distract from the progress that Sir Keir's making. Is there an element of truth to that you're a kind of Corbynista who's trying to rock the boat?
No, I reject that. This is a stand I'm taking over a particular issue. I have to stand by what I believe in, and I think we've not made the right decision here. I hope it can be corrected and we can get back onto the right path.
And if Sir Keir doesn't listen to your concerns, should he move aside for someone else? Angela Rayner, whoever that might be?
I'm not going to comment on that, because I recognise that this is going to send shockwaves now, and I'm sorry about that. But it's up to Keir Starmer to reflect upon what I'm trying to communicate here, and think about how we can assuage the fears of people like myself and some of the general secretaries in the trade union movement, who I strongly suspect are supporting the position that I've adopted in relation to these critically important matters for working people in our country.
Andy Mcdonnell, thanks very much for joining us. Well, let's go back to Gary, who's in Brighton. Gary, it's sort of torpedoed the conference, hasn't it, really?
Well, you heard Andy Mcdonnell there saying to you that he thought he was sending shockwaves. The lines that we're getting out of senior aides in the party, though, are pretty dismissive. One said, "We won't be shedding any tears over this resignation." And today was the day that Louise Ellman, a former Labour MP, Jewish former Labour MP, came back into the party. And a senior figure in the party said, Andy Mcdonnell out, Louise Ellman in. That sounds to me like a good exchange. It is a curious sort of tone, though, when you think back to how Keir Starmer campaigned for the leadership, almost a sort of kumbaya quality to the whole thing. Let's all link arms. And this brittleness that you hear in that resignation today, and the way others are dealing with it, is everywhere around this conference. And you saw in our report earlier, Len McCluskey, former General Secretary of Unite, we were talking to him, and just as we finished talking to him, along came a veteran right Labour MP on the right of the Labour Party, John Speller. And we're going to play you, just to give a flavour of what the atmosphere is like at this conference, the exchange that followed. have you got your party back this week?
Made very considerable progress, I'm pleased to say, in spite of the best efforts of Momentum, who not only lost the election but wanted to carry on losing.
Does that make your heart sing?
No, I mean, John's been battling away for the right wing for a long time, but he has no vision. The rest of the right wing...
But he might have control of the party.
But that's temporary. These things are transitional, and what people...
He might have control of Keir Starmer.
What people need...
Who you thought was closer to you.
What people need out there is a vision. What is going to make their life better? And unfortunately, John's wing of the party don't have any answers to that.
With my side of the party, we were winning elections, and we won 3 general elections.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. And I fought for Tony in all of those 3 elections, as I do for every Labour leader. The problem is, as you well know, John, we started losing
recollections
dramatically.
may vary, Len. Recollections may vary, as I think someone said.
No. I thought I gave as much support to Tony Blair at election time than anybody else, but we always seen that we were losing the support. This dramatic...
Crosby says you can't fatten a pig on election day, and the fact is that many on the left were attacking and undermining Tony.
Attacking and undermining. You'd be the arch king at that. Poor Jeremy, from the moment he was elected, you and your cohorts did nothing but stab him in the back. You'd sooner see a Conservative government elected than a left-wing Labour government.
The voters were never going to buy Jeremy Corbyn.
Oh, 2017. 2017. More people in England voted for Jeremy Corbyn than voted for Tony Blair. 12.9 million people. And if it hadn't been for people like you knifing him in the back, Corbyn would have been in number 10 now, and we'd have a much better Britain than we have at the moment.
He was a disaster in 2 elections.
No, he wasn't. 2017, he was a disaster. Biggest swing since 1945, John.
The public didn't think he could win.
John, that's not true.
Both of you were sort of fighting for Keir Starmer's ear. You wanted him on your side. You thought he might carry on bits of the Corbyn project. You hoped he would pull the party back to where you wanted it.
No, where the public want it.
You've won, you think?
We've made considerable progress.
He's your man, Keir Starmer, because people weren't sure whose man he was.
Where Len is right is politics is always changing. The only constant is change in politics. But when the change comes in the direction of lining up with the public, being a moderate progressive party, that's when we win elections. That's what the good news out of this conference is.
Keir Starmer played the Corbyn wing of the party like a violin in that leadership contest. Was he duping them?
You better ask
Or did he change his mind?
And the reality is he's been captured by the right wing. Is he a babe in the woods, or is he a Machiavellian politician? If you were to ask me that question, I'd say, I don't know yet.
Well, now in Brighton is the Shadow Scotland Secretary, Ian Murray. Ian Murray, Andy McDonald said he couldn't look key workers in the face and tell them they're not worth a wage that's enough to live on. Can you do that?
Well, it's very interesting that that's what Andy McDonald said, because this is a policy that he signed off and launched with Angela Rayner on Saturday to conference, and the meeting that was supposed to happen to composite the motion together was to debate that particular paper. It was a paper that refocused the party on working people, and it's incredibly disappointing that Andy McDonald has resigned, or chosen to resign as a result of it. He's told other people he's resigned for other reasons, so
what
I think maybe the public can make their own mind up. Well, you'll have to ask Andy McDonald himself. He's written a letter to Keir Starmer claiming it was one thing. He's telling reporters it was another. It looks slightly orchestrated to me to resign the day before the debate on a policy that you launched less than 72 hours ago in front of conference, to much acclaim, because it's an incredibly strong package of measures that refocuses the Labour Party towards working people in this country and refocuses the economy towards working people in this country, that he's resigned over that very policy.
Well, so you think it's a Corbynista plot, do you?
Well, that's again something that people will have to make their own minds up about. It's fairly inconsistent about why Andy McDonald has resigned. Well, I think it looks a little bit like a deliberate sabotage, but that's for other people to make their mind up. Look, we've got a Labour Party at the moment that over the last few days has been changing rules to the extent that the anti-Semitism issue, which was a huge issue at the last election, has resulted in us changing the rules so that we deal with that problem. And we've dealt with it so much that Domaine Louise Ellman has rejoined the Labour Party. That's how much progress Keir has made on the promises to rid the party of anti-Semitism. We've changed the rules to stop having these internal conversations so that we can have the conversation with the voters and refocus our entire party on the voters, and that's what we should be doing, and that's what this week is supposed to be all about. So for people to be self-indulgent by resigning on policies that they signed off just 40 hours ago and delivered and to the conference in front of adulation from the crowd in there just seems to me to be slightly bizarre, and it's letting down the party members, and most importantly, particularly with what's going on in the country at the moment, letting down the country.
Well, you described it as deliberate sabotage, and it's disastrous for you, isn't it? You know, a member of the shadow cabinet quits during conference. So this was Sir Keir's big moment. It's a nightmare for him, isn't it?
Well, actually, what we should have been talking about today was Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor's wonderful speech. It was full of fiscal policy. It was about refocusing the party on changing the economy so it works for working people. It was about investing vast amounts of money in resolving the climate change issue. That's what we should have been talking about today. But with half an hour to go before the end of conference, someone resigns on grounds that we're very unclear about why so far. And we end up talking about it. And that is the problem. That's what Keir is trying to sort this week, is to make sure the party refocuses to the public.
And you don't look like a government in waiting, do you?
Well, Keir's trying to turn the party into a government in waiting. We have lots of exciting policies already announced this week on workers' rights, on pay, on housing, on climate change. A wonderful speech from the Shadow Chancellor today that would encourage people to look at and to read and to digest, refocusing the party towards voters, changing the rules so we don't have these internal batters, getting rid of anti-Semitism so that people that left and were hounded out of this party because of anti-Semitism are rejoining. That seems to me to be, in 24 hours and 48 hours, a very good success story for Keir Starmer in the build-up to his speech on Wednesday. But it looks as though we're talking about other things again, because the self-indulgence of individuals is much more important than the party and the country.